everyone. This is Andrea's Pop Culture. Today is the latest Andrea's Pop Culture Retrospective slash review, and it's on The Shadow, the 1994 film starring Alec Baldwin, Penelope Ann Miller, and John uh, Long. That's the bit for the film. This is for his 30th anniversary. Happy 30th anniversary for The Shadow, the pulp hero that inspired the most awesome superhero of all time. Of course, my favorite, Batman. Anyway, so the Shadow from 1994 was an attempt from Universal to capitalize on the success of Tim Burton's Batman films during the night from 1989 to 1992. Now, as I mentioned before, how this character did inspire Batman. Back in the day, the Shadow, ironically, was the character for base Batman during the late 30s and early 40s. 1950s. Also, what I found interesting that the Shadow was directed by Russell Mulcahy. Russell, who directed this film, is the one that directed the first two Highlander films. Haven't seen those. I heard the first one's really good. It stars Clayton Brown as the villain and highlight. Uh, the Shadow isn't perfect, but I admit I fairly enjoyed this film when I was growing up, and it still is great in repeating readings. I enjoyed many down to the cast, the music, the setting, and some other aspects of the film, which I will get into in the review. Now, let's get into the cast. The cast, I think, is really great. I mean, Alec Baldwin as Preston slash the Shadow is really awesome. I like that he started off as a bad guy, but is trained on screen, which I will talk about more in detail as a next week, to use his mental abilities, his mental psychic abilities for good. Penelope Ann Miller and Ian McKellen plays the character the Marvel and Dr. Reinhardt in the film. Both are spectacular in the film, particularly Penelope Ann Miller, which I really love. I think she's one of the best love interests in a comic. She isn't the depth to stress. She actually is a very proactive character who has, just like Creston, technically abilities as well. And then we got the main villain, Sean Khan, John Ron, playing the character was the highlight for me for the film. He's one of the best villains, I think. He's a version of Creston that failed to turn good, which is awesome. He has the same abilities as him, but much powerful. Also, running up the cast with that, Tim Curry as Claymore was pretty good, actually. He's very fun. He's definitely the comedic relief in the film as well. He seemed to enjoy to play his role the most, which is great. Just aside, no, I was speaking of more Batman facts. Sorry about that. Alec Baldwin was considered to be Bruce Wayne during some of the preceding 90s Batman films, and then Tim Curry was also considered to be the Joker for the Batman 1989. So very interesting. There's a lot of, not only pulp Batman comics connections, but also movies as well. The 1994 film version of The Shadow is very, I say, evocative of The Shadow. The New York of the film is dark and foreboding, which is good, as was the New York of the pulp stories. The background music, while looking like spinning wheel, spinning wheel, the famous radio theme is still quite good. It gives the mood and adventure mystery that is most suitable for the show. And the movie even throws in a few references to the evil that lurks in Harford Man, the root of crime, and a couple of the shadow notes, which is really great. It tells they really like the shadow as a character. This film is not pulp deviation, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but because it's not meant to be read, it's to be watched. But it lies heavily on the pulp version of the character for vision. But I gotta say, it's 75% pulp inspired, 15% radio inspired, and 10% created from Mir, which I think is a good compromise. They really combine each effort with the radio, TV, or like the movie series, combine a new version for the modern times during the 90s, which I think is good. That's why I watched this movie 4 times. But partly this movie. And for the person who really watched the movie more than once, like myself, that's pretty good news. Then we get into other aspects. Special effects. For the most part, I think they hold up okay. I gotta say, the CGI does hold poorly for this film. Well, I think the most impressive use of the eye has to be the center knife of the top. I think that's really impressive. The rest of the effects come off as either flat or just don't blend well with the real textures on backgrounds in the world that you see in the film. But uh, right side, the practical sense, are arguably the film's strongest visual effects suit, with the whole of the mirrors being one of my favorites of the bunch, similar to Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee's film, which is really neat. But it's a shame because I didn't know this until getting out to the notes that the majority of the set was destroyed in a airfield. This led to much of the shortened, reshot version of the final fight between Creston and Clark. So, uh, compared to other comic book films that came out during this time, like the 90s, long after, mid 2000s, 2010s, I think the genre is often and forgotten about, which is a shame. I think uh, this film, not perfect, as I said before during this review, although I think the genre doesn't have the more tight knit storytelling that many comic films have, like Superman the movie or The Dark Knight, if I could put examples. But it has that like massive sorrow or the Phantom kind of vibes to it. It has a certain cinematic depth to it that many films today simply lack, which I think is very unfortunate. Shannon was produced at a budget of 40 million and made back only 48 million worldwide, which is a shame. It making it be a massive bomb for a particular reason, largely stiff competition back in 1904, because this was in between The Lion King and Jim Carrey's uh, comic book film, The Mask. Really, that's also happens 30th anniversary, which I will cover very soon. Coming out of that same time, Shadow was planned to spawn in film practice. And however, due to this financial failure, those plans never reached, you know, in development or creation, which is really sad. With comic book films, as I mentioned, the 1970s Superman or, the 1990s Batman film being credited as some of the most iconic films that kickstarted the superhero genre, most forget about this hidden gem. Although not as wholesome as Superman film or the dark and vengeful as Batman, the channel was one of those oldest superheroes to be introduced to the public. It's a shame that the 1994 film didn't get the same attention as the former superhero films, as I mentioned. To me, the channel truly feels like a serialized radio show, but to life up basically, much like Brendan Fraser's Miami films. Back in the 1990s. I could love to see the film franchise based off The Shadow. I think there's a lot of potential with The Shadow. I think you could put a really hard horror bent to The Shadow or the supernatural element into a pulpy, modern times noir kind of thriller to The Shadow. I could see maybe I can see it crossing with more popular properties like Batman. With many beloved and obscure properties giving the remake treatment by Hollywood today, The Shadow deserves another chance to shine on the big screen. Overall, wrapping up to this review, I highly recommend seeing The Shadow, the 1940. I think I will plan to watch it again. Yes, The Shadow really knows. Uh, yeah, sure really knows. Doesn't know. The story is basic but serviceable, but there are some issues like why skip over Cranston's training and rehabilitation by the monk. I never understand why did they skip that. I think it could have been a great interesting order story, but they followed somewhat the route of the Batman '89 film of not explaining the order, which I could get. It never really explained how Khan was able to hide the entire apartment building for so long while only arriving at New York at the start. That's something that was kind of something I brought up that I noticed in this rewatch. That I say I like certain aspects, like the Shiloh's fighting scene. Fighting to see is pretty good. I like how they pulled that from Pulps with how he recruits members and communicates with his agents. Really neat, and another aspect we never seen in groups, and how some agents were used in the film. I like that. Also, I love the music by Jerry Goldsmith. One of the best music. I think this is something they need to bring back in the new film. Is the Jerry Goldsmith theme. Plus, the Art Deco look of the 1930s New York is really great. They really visualize New York in that pulpy sense, and it's so visually great. So, overall, I enjoyed the show, despite of some of the issues. I do recommend the film to those interested in older superhero films back in, the 1990s or back then. So happy 30th anniversary to The Shadow. And everyone, thank you so much for listening to The Shadow, 1994 30th anniversary retrospective slash review. I'll be back again for more latest retrospective slash review. That's it. Ciao.